Hello and welcome to Defund the BBC. My name is Calvin Robinson, and joining me this week is the founder of the UK's most popular political blog, responsible for keeping politicos up to date with all the latest political news, gossip and scandals. I am, of course, talking about Mr. Guido Fawkes himself, Paul Staines. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
I always say to people, no one used to call Paul Dacre Mr. Daily Mail, but I think there's a danger that I'm going to turn into, apparently Leonard Nimoy before he passed on, used to get very angry at people calling him Spock. But, it made him wealthy, so shouldn't complain too much, and nor should I.
You use someone's name for your publication, it's bound to happen, isn't it?
It's a double-edged sword, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure you'll agree that it's been an extremely explosive and turbulent week for the BBC. Former BBC employee and Telegraph columnist Robin Atkin has come out and said in the wake of this Bashir scandal that the BBC cannot be trusted to keep the BBC honest, nor can Ofcom. Essentially, wouldn't you agree, Paul, that this is a call to arms to take the BBC and hold them to account and get rid of the public ownership, and there's no chance of reform at this point?
I think the BBC model is always going to cause resentment because of its special place. It's got a royal charter, it's got a privileged position, and therefore, when it goes off the rails, it's held to a different standard, probably rightly, and so that's why people are so angry. And I just think that when the BBC was set up, it was a natural monopoly because there was no one else. It actually had to build the TV masts, etc. We are in a world that's changed greatly since then. So we don't need to have these continuous rows about BBC bias if we weren't funding it by a coercive model. And that is the problem.
Absolutely. But in relation to that scandal, the Bashir scandal, the BBC is now going to investigate itself. Nick Ferrari spoke on LBC the other morning and compared this to LBC presenters and staff investigating the LBC. This BBC-led investigation is utterly pointless. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the usual catchphrase of BBC investigations is deputy heads must roll, and in this case, nobody's head will roll because the people have long left the BBC. Tony Hall lost a sinecure he had at, was it the opera, or was it the National Arts? I don't know, some lovey position, which is unfortunate for him, but it seems irrelevant anyway. And then, was it Tom Souter had to resign from Ofcom of all places because he was involved in the original investigation, which is probably right. I mean, I do think that if Dacre came in and the governance of the BBC was under the purview of Paul Dacre, it would be a good thing because he's going to shake up the system. But as you can see, the establishment doesn't want Paul Dacre to be going to Ofcom because they're worried that he'll rock the boat far too much. Well, it needs a lot of rocking, if not sinking.
Indeed, I would say it's already sinking and they need someone to drag it out of the water. Martin Bashir isn't the only journalist who's been caught out behaving badly. Excuse my pronunciation of this. Tala Halawa, a BBC digital journalist, was caught tweeting some extremely anti-Semitic remarks, such as #Israel is more #Nazi than #Hitler. Oh, #Hitler was right. #IDF go to hell. #pray for Gaza. The first thing is first, has the BBC fired the journalist for such anti-Semitic and disgusting behaviour? And doesn't this go further than just breaching the Royal Charter?
All they've said to us, or the press officer said to us, is it's being investigated so far. Well, a week's gone by. Look, I'm not keen on calling for the sacking of journalists, but this, and it does predate her being hired, but it is a little bit more than student politics when you have that kind of terminology. It's one thing I think it's perfectly okay for politicians, for journalists to have had a political view before they become impartial broadcasters. So I don't think but this is going way beyond the ordinary. And just for 1 second, if somebody had that kind of view and was working at the Sun or the Mail, you could imagine the uproar there'd be. I think it's notable that, as far as I can tell, to this day, I have not seen any coverage of it in The Guardian or places like that.
Absolutely outrageous, isn't it? I'm with you on this in that I'm not for the cancellation of journalists, but she clearly breached impartiality there. But moving to more recent events, yesterday we saw, as we filmed this, we saw Dominic Cummings make a committee appearance in which the former number 10 advisor, exposed the government's handling of the pandemic. So last year, the BBC, i.e. Emily Maitlis and Newsnight, were all over Dominic Cummings because of the Barnard Castle affair. Don't you think it's extremely hypocritical, Paul, that journalists such as Emily Maitlis are sweeping their personal criticisms of him under the carpet now and fawning all over him because he's throwing the government under the bus?
Is it hypocritical? Possibly. It's at the lower end of the hypocritical threshold for me. I mean, basically, today's news is today's news. Yesterday's is wrapping chips, right? So I think if you're asking for consistency from any journalist, BBC or otherwise, on things, I think you'll be a little bit ambitious. I don't think it's a fault of the BBC per se, but it's always been a source of amusement how we can build people up or knock them down in journalism, or vice versa in the other order.
Absolutely. Now, Paul, I don't know if you're a fan of Eurovision, but I'm sure you'll have noticed that the UK once again came last with 0 points. Now, the BBC helps fund the Eurovision Song Contest, one of the big five, and even decided who represents the UK in the final. Should the BBC be wasting £300,000 a year for entry on funding a competition that they don't even put any effort into? Isn't it just wasting taxpayers' money?
Well, I think this is a problem with the privileged position of the BBC. I think it should be something that's bid for by other competing networks. I think Liz Truss said something at the same lines, right? I don't have a problem with Eurovision. And by the way, 300,000 isn't very much in terms of a £3.5 billion budget. So it's quite cheap, really. I think the host country usually picks up the big bill. In fact, I'm coming to you from Ireland. I remember when Ireland won it 3 times in a row or something, they were dreading RTE, which, by the way, is funded on a similar basis to Ireland's national broadcaster, funded on a similar basis to the BBC and a license, was dreading having to host it again because they have to pick up the costs in the most part again. And when you're a country of 4 million people, it was disproportionately expensive. So I think they were hoping that Germany would win. I think the trick with this is to open it up. I mean, you've got X Factor and all those kind of things on ITV. Why couldn't the winner of X Factor be our representative? It's noticeable, but that the way it's been done over the last few years, it hasn't worked, and I don't know why that is. My kids will tell you I'm not that au fait with the latest musical trends, but I don't know why. But I think more competition always produces a better result.
Yeah, that could be said for most things at the BBC, opening it up to the free market. From what we've seen in the media over the last week and the way in which the corporation's been behaving, would you agree, Paul, that what these stories we've been talking about today show us is that the BBC believes it's accountable to nobody, despite the fact that it prosecutes people for not paying the license fee?
The BBC believes it's a righteous mission. You know, the mission has changed over the years from the Reithian mission to today's mission of turning us all into woke, green types. The mission changes over the years, but it always believes it's a righteous mission. Therefore, because they are righteous, they can do terrible things, like fake up documents to get an interview with Princess Diana, and they can be forgiven for it because, on the whole, they are good people. Well, they're just the same as everyone else, and they should be treated like everyone else. So, just like I like the idea of disestablishing the Church of England and not allowing the bishops to be in the Lords by right, I think the BBC should be disestablished and just become another broadcaster funded by customers who want to pay for their product, not by threatening to send us to jail.
Absolutely. Give customers a choice. I like that sentiment. Paul Staines of Guido Fawkes, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting you on Defund the BBC.
Great to be here.